we revisited some cool British singles released in January 1968. Now it's time to do the same with February of that year. Let's begin.
Talking about the good times. Talking about the good.
February 1968 saw the release of this excellent psychedelic single by The Pretty Things, which was recorded at Abbey Road and produced by Norman Smith.
She had sun in her face, her lips kiss the sun, caress the sun, the fields of light we found.
By 1968, The Pretty Things had gone through several lineup changes, and at this point, lead vocalist Phil May and lead guitarist Dick Taylor were the only remaining members from the original lineup of the group. The single, just like their album SF Sorrow, went pretty much unnoticed at the time, but both sides of this 45 have become cult classics among fans of British psychedelia from the 60s. The B-side was another excellent song called Walking Through My Dreams.
Walking through my dreams and I'm not free.
The New Musical Express wrote,
"A strange blend of old-fashioned twang sounds and latter-day intricate harmonic patterns. A very interesting record by The Pretty Things, laden with ideas and musical patterns. In fact, it's something of a patchwork quilt, and it doesn't completely gel. But it holds the interest all the way. The lyric is simple and repetitive, as an effective contrast to the welter of sounds in the backing. Certainly a disc with a difference."
Despite its lack of success, the album SF Sorrow, which was released in December 1968, became a landmark record which paved the way for concept albums such as Tommy by The Who.
Cold turkey, with a stick of tea. Hey, hey, oh, sing your thing.
1968 is generally regarded as the year when psychedelia started to fade away. And while that is true to a certain extent, 1968 still saw the release of plenty of singles with a strong psychedelic flavor. This single by Big Boy Pete, with its cosmic and freaky sound, is one of the highlights of February 1968. Big Boy Pete, whose real name was Peter Miller, got his start in music in the late 50s, and spent the early to mid-60s playing in bands like the Offbeats and Peter J and the Jaywalkers. Miller also became an in-demand session guitarist, and he played on many iconic songs from that era. The guitarist had already released a solo single in 1966, and this single from 1968 was his first single with the name Big Boy Pete. Record Mirror wrote,
"Sounds like road drills have been used on the backing to this. Powerful dance beat and quite appealing vocal work, but rather dated and very noisy."
The B-side was another cool track with an unusual freaky cosmic sound.
See, my love is like a spaceship.
As a curious note, John Lennon was a huge fan of Peter Miller's guitar playing, and he unsuccessfully tried to get him signed to Apple. Some sources suggest that this single probably inspired Lennon to write Cold Turkey a couple of years later in 1970.
Maybe the madman was right. The sun travels on round the world and keeps shining.
February 1968 also saw the release of this great psychedelic B-side by the Troggs. The song had a truly weird structure, alternating between spoken verses and melodic passages with way-out vocal effects.
Building fairy castles in a hostile space of undiscovered skies.
The A-side was a melodic ballad called Little Girl, which was banned by the BBC due to its lyrical content.
Little girl, a little girl.
The New Musical Express wrote,
Leaving the lyric alone for a moment, I must say that this is a very pleasant sounding disc by the Troggs. The tune is catchy and the group's performance is first class. It's the sort of record that would be assured a place in the upper regions of the chart if it wasn't for the lyric, about a child born out of wedlock. Mind you, I think Reg Presley's words are put together with good taste and considerable thought, but the BBC might not be so charitable, and restricted airplay won't help its chances. Apart from that though, it's a good follow-up to Love Is All Around. The flip is an exercise in gimmicky gone berserk. A medium pace are full of weird effects and distorted vocals on exaggerated echo.
The single peaked at number 37.
I'm looking for a girl who has no face.
February 1968 was a good month for Traffic fans. Apart from this excellent single by Stevie Winwood and Company, February 1968 also saw the release of this solo single by Dave Mason, who had recently left the band. Disc magazine journalist Penny Valentine wrote,
From their LP, a perfectly brilliant piece of beautiful understatement from the Traffic. I'm getting as fed up as everyone else, of raving about the Traffic's brilliance and perfection. But really the truth is that they are enormously talented. If you haven't heard it already, this is a love song of utter loneliness with high soft woodwind introducing Stevie's lost voice. It's a record to listen to, and you should do just that.
The B-side was another excellent song. The single peaked at number 40.
A little woman walked the downs, a frightened partridge fled the ground.
As previously stated, February also saw the release of this single by ex-Traffic member Dave Mason. In fact, the single was released the same week as the Traffic 45. The New Musical Express wrote,
Virtually 2 Traffic singles this week, because here's ex-group member Dave Mason with his first solo offering, backed by Traffic. And what a strange disc it is, quite incredible in fact. Dave's moody tones are supported by a completely non-electric backing comprising cello, violin, flute, acoustic guitar, sleigh bells, assorted percussion, and a couple of Indian instruments. The result sounds like a cross between Ravi Shankar and a medieval English Morris dance. Dave's part in the proceedings is interesting in that he uses his voice almost as another instrument. Listen to it at least 10 times, and you agree it's wholly absorbing. The flip is a song called Just For You. This song was originally planned as the A-side, and it certainly has the more instant appeal of the two. A throbbing upbeat item, exuding great vitality.
The single didn't manage to reach the charts.
Sitting very still.
One of the most successful British singles released in February 1968 was Jennifer Juniper by Donovan. The song was written about Pattie Boyd's sister Jenny Boyd, who was Donovan's girlfriend at the time. Record Mirror wrote,
This is a mid-tempo gentle type of catchy folk-tinged item. Pleasant vocalizing and repetitive lyric which is effective. It must be a hit, but it may move slightly slower than his last few singles. It's certainly very nice. It's kind of English village music circa 1850, in the style of Thomas Hardy.
The single reached number 5 in Britain, and number 26 in the States. Several British bands who became big names in the early 70s released their debut single in February 1968. Jethro Tull released their first single in February of that year. Due to a mistake in the pressing plant, the single was erroneously released as Jethro Tull. At this point, guitarist Mick Abrahams was still in the band, and the group was starting to make a name for themselves in the club scene in London. But Jethro Tull hadn't yet developed their own signature sound. The A-side was a good bluesy folky number called Sunshine Day.
Come this morning to look at things in their funny way. Why can't they be like they used to be only yesterday?
The B-side, a song called Aeroplane, was more reminiscent of bands such as the Byrds.
Flying, made of sticks and paper.
The single went pretty much unnoticed, and it only managed to get this small review from Record Mirror.
Baby, you feel so close.
Genesis was another band who reached bigger success in the early 70s. The group released their debut single in February 1968, and just like Jethro Tull, their music was very different from the sort of progressive rock material that made him famous a few years later. At the time, Genesis were managed and produced by Jonathan King, and the band's music followed a more straightforward pop direction. The New Musical Express wrote,
I'm still not sure what the enigmatic lyric is all about, but I gather that the title refers to a girl. This is certainly a thought-provoking song that holds the attention throughout. Competently handled by Genesis, with a beautiful flowing arrangement of violins and cellos. A disc of many facets and great depth, but it might be a bit too complex for the average fan.
The single failed to chart.
Vulnerable people flying in the air. Vulnerable people gone everywhere.
10 years after, yet another band who reached bigger success in the very late 60s and early 70s. Portable People was their debut single. Penny Valentine wrote,
This is here because this group made a fine blues LP and now come up with this very good single. It isn't a hit, although they have tried to conform a little to make themselves more commercial without losing any of the goodies. But it is a beautifully produced record with fantastic underplayed controlled guitar and throwaway vocals. A masterpiece of understatement. Let us hope it brings them the recognition they deserve.
If I had a ribbon bow to tie my hair and a gown of calico for me to wear.
And yet another band who reached their commercial peak in the very late 60s and early 70s was Fairport Convention. At this point in early 68, however, the band still hadn't developed their signature folk rock sound, and lead singer Sandy Denny didn't join the band until 1969. At the time, Fairport Convention was still seen as a sort of British version of Jefferson Airplane, and the band was fronted by lead singers Judy Dybel and Ian Matthews. The New Musical Express wrote,
A delicate number with a fine gossamer-like texture featuring the fragile willowy voice of the girl singer and the soft humming support from the rest of the group. There's a gently jogging rhythm, an obtrusive backing of guitars and vibes, and a very noticeable folksy quality. It's a disc that provides very easy listening, undemanding, quiet, melodic, and appealing.
The single didn't chart. In late 1967, Manfred Mann were asked to write and record the soundtrack to a film called Up the Junction. The result was some of the best music Manfred Mann ever recorded, 60s pop at its best. However, by the time this 45 was released, The Mighty Quinn was still at number 1. And despite the quality of both sides of this single, the record went pretty much unnoticed. The New Musical Express wrote,
The score for the controversial Up the Junction film was entirely written and performed by Manfred Mann. And this is the title number that runs through the picture. It's a brilliantly descriptive piece conjuring up mental visions of the sordid and squalid location of the film. It features some wonderfully sensitive harmonies by the boys, set to a backing of clanking piano, tambourine, twangs, and a solid beat. And at the end, it tapers off into infinity. The melody is simple and quick to register, with the title phrase constantly repeated. I'm told that this isn't intended as a follow-up to The Mighty Quinn, but with the group's current popularity, it could catch on.
The B-side, a song called Sleepy Hollow, was an excellent track written by guitarist Tom McGuinness.
There is a place where we can go, and you won't need to worry.
As previously stated, the single didn't chart in Britain, and it only entered the charts in the Netherlands, where it peaked at number 32.
You're drifting through the lily pads away. You're on the river to another day.
Dave Edmunds is another musician who reached bigger popularity in the 70s, but the guitarist got his start in music as a member of Love Sculpture. River to Another Day was a great psychedelic track that deserved to do better than it did. The single got excellent reviews in the press. The Melody Maker wrote,
An air of magic and mystery pervades this Beatle-influenced and extremely interesting sound. A clear and attractive lead voice. And the backing has some sturdy drumming, carefully used backward tapes, and an effective fade-out. My only complaint is that it's too short. This is one to watch.
The B-side was a song called Brand New Woman, which was more akin to the sort of material that Dave Edmunds performed later in the 70s. The single didn't chart.
Listen to me as I sit in the street.
This single by Mike Stewart Span is one of those psychedelic singles from the 60s that have become truly expensive collector's items over the years. copies of this single have exchanged hands on Discogs or eBay for over £1,000. The single went pretty much unnoticed when it was originally released, but both sides of the 45 have been featured on several compilations over the years. The A-side was an excellent slice of psychedelia called Children of Tomorrow. The B-side was another good psychedelic tune called Concerto of Thoughts.
Through the grayness of my mind, I realized that sleep was overtaking.
Apparently, only a few copies of the single were pressed, and the British music papers completely ignored it and didn't even bother to review it. The single was reissued by Spanish label Munster Records in 2016.
Love is kinda crazy with a spooky little girl like you.
The Walker brothers broke up in late 1967, and Gary Walker, also known as Gary Leeds, formed this band called Gary Walker and the Rain in early 1968. Their first release, which was produced by Scott Walker, was a cover of this number which had recently been a hit in the States by Classics 4. Record Mirror wrote,
Very good treatment vocally and instrumentally of the big American hit number. Gary performs with a casual sort of calm, injecting charm in a high-pitched sort of way. I fancy it more than the American original. Some very strong ideas in the backing treatment. The flip is a song called I Can't Stand to Lose You.
You wouldn't hear my plea, I packed my bags, I'm leaving you, just watch me.
The original version by Classics 4 was released in the UK the same week as the version by Gary Walker, and both singles failed to enter the top 40. The Gary Walker version didn't even manage to enter the charts, while the original version by Classics 4 stalled at number 46.
Sends a winning number spinning through the circles, he begins to fly.
This is one of the best singles that Paul and Barry Ryan ever released. Pictures of Today was a good psychedelic pop number which was quite different from most of the stuff the Twins had previously released.
And someone's eating from my
The New Musical Express wrote,
From the point of view of both performance and material, this is the best record the Ryans have made to date. It presents the Twins in an entirely new image. It's a powerful rhythmic ballad with a descriptive lyric and a boisterous all-happening backing, complete with Indian effects. The boys display a newfound maturity in their meaningful styling, and their rendition dovetails perfectly with the sizzling accompaniment. The vocal is a trifle sibilant, but that's a mere technicality. I reserve judgment on its chart potential, but it deserves to click.
The single didn't chart in Britain, but it became a decent hit in Germany. February 1968 also saw the release of this great tune by The Equals. The song, with its driving beat and catchy chorus, became a staple of their live shows. The New Musical Express wrote,
With a recent LP hit to their credit, The Equals are now striving for single success. And they certainly generate plenty of vocal dynamite in this frenzied raver. The room temperature goes up 10 degrees when this is on the turntable. Despite the basically dated sound, it's an effervescent, stimulating disc.
The single didn't chart in Britain, but it became a big success in Germany.
Magic spectacle, I can see magic everywhere.
This group called The Nerve was managed and produced by Troggs lead singer Reg Presley. Magic Spectacles was a great slice of naive psychedelic pop that actually managed to get some good reviews and good promotion in the press. The New Musical Express wrote,
This is the group managed by Trog Reg Presley, who also produced its debut disc. It's an intriguing track, with the fruity-voiced soloist backed by some fascinating contrapuntal harmonies, and the scoring has a pronounced classical influence, sounding at times like a chamber music recital. Gentle rhythm, coupled with an absorbing lyric, make this a worthwhile record. But possibly too adventurous for the chart.
Despite the press attention, however, the song didn't get any airplay on Radio 1, and the single sank without a trace. I hope you enjoyed this trip back to February 1968. See you next time.